UFC Vegas 47 is almost here. I'm going to give you my final picks. We're going to have a good time. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. If you haven't already, go back and watch the first look video from earlier in the week. That acts as more of a full card breakdown. That's where we go over the slate fighter by fighter, salary by salary, and we talk about spots that we like and spots that we don't like. For this final picks video, we're going to focus on strategy, what we need to do to be successful on this card, and how we can get different this week. And if you've been enjoying the content at all, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel. As you know by now, if you don't subscribe and you watch the videos, it's bad luck. But looking at this card, we still have 13 fights. Despite Phil Hawes pulling out of his fight, we got Brendan Allen instead. And as long as weigh-ins go smoothly, we're going to have a nice juicy card to work with. Now for cash games, we definitely want to stack the main event. I don't recommend playing Jack Hermansson on his own. I like the Joker, but I wouldn't recommend playing him by himself. I just don't see a clear path to victory for him in this fight. On the other side, Sean Strickland looks like a must-play given the way that he fights, the pace that he fights at, and then he's got 5 rounds to work with. I expect him to be the highest-owned fighter on the slate, and I see a couple of other fighters that are probably going to be pulling high ownership as well. Deniz Bondar is probably going to come in at very high ownership. I think the same thing about Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I also, at a lower price point, can see a lot of people getting to Phil Rowe here. And a lot of these are really obvious plays, like Phil Rowe with his 10.5-inch reach advantage. You've also got Shavkat Rakhmonov, who might be the future of the division. And then you've got Deniz Bondar, who's looking like he's live for a first or second round finish. So none of these guys are bad plays, but they are going to be chalky this week. Keeping that in mind, we need to do our best to try to find fighters that aren't going to be pulling as high of ownership. Now, obviously, the cheaper plays like 8,000 and below, they're going to come in at lower ownership than some of the guys that we just mentioned. And I'm going to talk about the plays below 8,000 that I think have some real value in just a minute here. But first, I want to talk about a sneaky leverage play this week who really isn't cheap. Earlier in the week, I wasn't very high on Brendan Allen, but the closer that I look at this, the more I feel like this makes a ton of sense. Earlier in the week, I said that I probably wasn't targeting this fight just because I expect it to go to decision. Just the situation where Brendan Allen outpoints him, just throws more strikes, lands more strikes per round, but doesn't do enough to score you a ton. But when you're building lineups, it's important to challenge your own process. What if a low-scoring decision win wasn't the way that this went for Brendan Allen? What if we had it all wrong? Because think of this for a second. First things first, Brendan Allen wins this fight 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, frankly. So that's a huge plus because it makes him a safe play because you know you're going to get the win. On top of that, Brendan Allen is coming off of this loss here to Chris Curtis where he was knocked out as a $9,600 priced favorite. That kind of stuff leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. They might pick Brendan Allen, they thought he was the safe play that week, and he gets knocked out in the second round, and they're sitting there pissed because the most expensive fighter on the slate flopped. So that recency bias could leave a bad taste in people's mouths and as a result hold down his ownership. And if most people were thinking how I was earlier in the week for the first look, if they think that Brendan Allen's going to win a low scoring decision, that's also going to hold down his ownership. But what if Brendan Allen is just pissed off about what happened last time and he wants to remind everybody about how good he is? He wants to come in here and make a statement. He doesn't just want to win a fight against Sam Alvey, but he wants to look good while he's doing it, looking for the finish. Because he may have success just taking Sam Alvey to the ground and then looking for that rear naked choke. Sam Alvey notoriously, historically, has good takedown defense, but he also is well past his prime. So there might be an opportunity for Brendan Allen to get this fight to the ground and finish it there. If not, he could just push a pace on the feet. Sam Alvey is very hittable. He's got a good chin, but biology only goes so far. If Brendan Allen's landing a ton of strikes, the guy's going to go down. So at 9,300, I think the price, I think the recent knockout, I think the low potential for a finish all holds his ownership down. He may be sneaky leverage. And so if Brendan Allen gets this done inside the distance this week, that could really shake things up on this slate. I think Brendan Allen at 9,300, sneaky good, sneaky good. Now I want to get into some value plays. These are fighters priced at 8,000 and below. First would have to be Bryan Battle at 7,900. I'm noticing a lot of people taking Bryan Battle seriously this week, and we should. I know there's a lot being made of Trishan Gore's power, but it may be overhyped. And I think the cardio, the length, the kicking game, the straight up grit are going to be what wins Bryan Battle this fight. I expect him to find a submission later in this fight, maybe rounds 2, round 3. I just think that Trishan Gore is very green, and I'm very high on Bryan Battle. I think he's going to be a new name to watch out for at 185 pounds, and at 7,900, I see myself getting here. At 7,600, we've got Nick Maximov, and this is a bit of a boom or bust play. If he wins, he secures multiple takedowns, control time, and maybe a submission later in the fight. And if it happens that way, you're going to need him in your lineup at 7,600. The issue is he could get knocked out in the first round. We know that Puna has decent power, and the biggest hole in Maximov's game is his striking. So we're at a fork in the road, we're at an impasse. We've got a classic striker versus grappler matchup. What are we supposed to do? Well, if you've watched this channel at all, if you watched the How to Win video from a couple of weeks ago, you know that Draftkings scores grappling heavier than any other statistic, any other metric, and we go with the grappler in situations like this more often than not. So at 7,600, I'm going with Nick Maximov to win this fight. I think it's going to be by decision, but with the takedowns, the control time, maybe some strikes from a dominant position, I expect him to score a decent amount of points, and I think he's a good value. Next, I wanted to touch on John Castaneda. So he's becoming one of the more popular plays publicly, one of the more popular dogs publicly. And the case that's made about Castaneda is that he has a better gas tank than Miles Johns, and he might win a decision because he steals rounds based on volume. I don't know if I'm buying that. I would feel better about playing him if there was a specific attribute of his that I really liked. If I thought he's got enough knockout power to KO Miles Johns, or he's got the wrestling advantage so he can get this fight to the ground and score some points from a dominant position there. But I don't like to pick a fighter on the basis that the other person is really bad at something, because realistically, if you put these guys side by side, who has more punching power, who has better offensive wrestling, who has more UFC experience, all of that goes to Miles Johns. So I don't see Castaneda as great value at this price, but I did want to touch on him for this video. Now at 7,200, I cannot get enough of Carlston Harris this week. Now obviously we don't love the matchup, right? There are other guys that are unranked at welterweight who we'd feel much better betting against than Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I still need to go with Carlston Harris this week. He's super cagey, very awkward, high killer instinct. He's always looking for the finish. I don't expect this fight to go the distance. Both these guys are super dangerous. I do expect more of the field to go to Rakhmonov. So when you look at the leverage and the finishing upside, it makes me think that Mozambique's a great value this week. 7,200 at this price, I can't get enough. And then lastly, all the way down here at 6,800, we've got Danilo Marquez. Danilo Marquez may win this fight. I spoke about how Jailton Almeida might be a trap in the first look video, and ultimately I did still pick him to win. I'm changing my mind. I'm going with Danilo Marquez. And to be fair, I might not get here in my single entry, but I can't shake the feeling that he's just going to have a lot of success on the ground. I know Almeida's a good grappler. I know that he's a good wrestler. He has good entries with his takedowns, but I could see him getting reversed. But if he leaves any opening for Marquez to reverse him, Marquez is going to take full advantage and be on him like a wet blanket. And we know at times fighters do struggle in their UFC debuts because of nervous energy, big step up in competition. If Jailton Almeida shoots a takedown, gets reversed, and has a 6'6" Danilo Marquez in top position, he could freak out. He could gas out. And I know it's hard to see the $9,400 massive favorite losing, but this fight, in my opinion, is a lot closer than the line is indicating. So Danilo Marquez, you don't have to get here, but I don't think it's a bad shot at such a low price tag. It opens up a lot of other things for you. And I think that, again, the fight's closer than what the pricing might suggest. Now, how do we get different this week? I think there are a couple of things that we touched on throughout the video that I think are really important. Brendan Allen, I think, is going to come in probably south of 20 to 25% ownership, which is huge, especially if you're in a single entry contest. Playing multiple underdogs is not a bad look this week. There are a couple of plays under 8,000 that you could play. You could leave some salary on the table, 500-600, and that's going to make you different. And also targeting the mid-range, like Marc-Andre Barriol. You've got Philip Rowe, who I think is going to be chalky, but maybe not because of where he's priced. And I think targeting the mid-range would really help. Targeting guys like Marc-Andre Barriol, Bryan Battle, Philip Rowe. And I will say this too, because I feel like I need to throw this out there. If you're taking a shot, if you're in a large field contest, I'm talking like one of these with 100,000, 40,000, over a lot of people, as much as you might not want to, maybe. Seems far-fetched, very far-fetched. I won't get here either, but I guarantee the lowest owned fighter on the slate outside of maybe Danilo Marquez. And I wouldn't recommend it. So those are my final thoughts. Again, go back and watch the first look so you can see my thoughts on every single fighter. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way I can bring more of this to you.